All right, record. Hello, and welcome to the 13th Annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Webinar. I'm Leah Langby from the IFLS Library System, and I'm moderating the Small Libraries track. And assisting me today is Jean Anderson. She's the co-moderator, and she's from the South Central Library System. We're really glad to have you here. And we're also really glad to have April O'Hara Hernandez here with us today. She is currently the director of the I should have asked to pronounce. How do you say it?
Later.
Leta, Leta County Library District in Idaho. I got your name, but I forgot about the name of your employer. She'll be discussing what works for rural library partnerships. So and she'll be taking questions at the end, but she does have a question for all of you. So you can look forward to participating in that. All right, thanks everyone. And
Yes,
I'll
please participate. So, like Leah said, I am April O'Hara Hernandez, and I am the director at Latah County Library District in Idaho. Our headquarters is in Moscow, Idaho, which is a town of about 26,000. But we have 7 libraries within the district, so the other 6 are in very small, very rural areas, from about 198 individuals to 1,075 individuals. So some of them are very, very teeny tiny. And they all have one branch manager that works by themselves daily. So it's a lot, even when you don't have to deal with a board, but still having to do all of the running of the library programming and everything, which we are in the process of working on hiring some people to help with that, so they have a little bit more support out of Moscow, because since we are the headquarters and we have a lot of the staff, we feel like we need to be supporting them a little bit more. My background in libraries, I did start in academic libraries in September of 2013. And I enjoyed that. I'd always loved libraries. I grew up going to libraries all the time. And so started an academic library, a very small one, community college, and then got an internship and went to a 4-year college in the Kansas City area. So, and I did enjoy that, but I did make the switch. I started my MLS in January of 2014, and I made the switch to public libraries in August of 2014, and found my love for everything public, because public libraries can be anything their communities need them to be, and you get to do fun things, and nothing's ever the same in any given day. And you can plan, and your plan doesn't work out hardly ever, for what your day is going to look like, because a million other things come up. And so I've been in public libraries since then, with a little bit of a respite for about 1.5 years. I worked at one of our regional library systems in Kansas, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed helping and supporting public library directors in 14 counties. And I enjoyed helping training their boards and things like that. But I really missed the day-to-day running of the library. And so I came back and moved out of state, and am now really enjoying being at Latah County, which is a little different, running 7 libraries as opposed to just one at a time. So I'm learning lots, and that's exciting because that keeps me on my toes too. On top of that, I'm also an adjunct instructor at Dominican University, where I'm working on my PhD right now. And this Sparking Community Connections is actually the title of my dissertation. And a lot of the things that we will talk about today have come out of either my personal experience in building partnerships in small rural libraries, or through my research that I've been doing. So rural libraries are very important to their communities in ways that larger libraries are not. And so I think, small libraries and rural libraries are really, all libraries are the heart of their communities, but really looking at the fact that in these rural locations, they are the only thing, the only place for kids to go, the only place for adults to go to have learn new things, have interesting discussions, and really have access to information. And in these small rural areas, our branches really are that outlet to the wider world, and allow for people to get their health information, to apply for jobs, and to fill out online forms that they need to. In many of our district branches, the library, there's difficult with connectivity, not just Wi-Fi, but even cell connectivity. So a lot of times, if our community members can't afford any of those extra expenses, then we are the only way they have to connect to the outside. Oh, I didn't try to get this to go. Oh, there it goes. Ha. So I do have questions for you at the beginning. I want to kind of know, and you guys can answer in the chat, what does the word partnership mean to you? Does your library currently utilize partnerships to increase, especially budgetary and staff capacity? Because I know in rural libraries, we always have teeny tiny budgets and usually one staff member. So, and what have been your biggest challenges in building partnerships? So if you guys want to throw some answers in the chat, that would be awesome. And nobody is asking. So
I'm guessing that they're just taking a minute to get there.
They are. It does take a little bit.
There, here it all comes.
Here they come. Yes, awesome. I will let you read them out because it scrolls too fast for me.
Yeah. A lot of work is done with community partners in Sarah's saying. Partnership is cross-pollination. Each member hopefully grows from the partnership. More people attending programs, many hands making light work. Partnership to me is all parties having a similar goal and working together to reach that goal. Challenge is a lack of partners in immediate area due to a super small town.
Yes.
Partnerships equals working with someone to accomplish a goal. Equality is in the partnership is important. I work part-time at the library and part-time at UW Extension office in the county. Awesome. We've created a partnership through that. Extension is great partners.
Yes.
Collaboration. We partner with another nearby library for programs with local school for programs.
Yep.
The biggest challenge for Katie is communication in a partnership. Partnerships are supporting each other's goals, collaborating with another organization to meet a common goal. Partnership is essential to extend the reach for both libraries and organizations. Struggle is with municipal partners not recognizing the value of the library in the community. Yes. Previous librarian didn't want partnerships, so it's been a challenge to gradually we're accomplishing it. Lack of time and staff is a challenge. Partnership is two organizations working together to accomplish mutual goals. Challenge is getting others to want to partner is a challenge. Establishing and continuing a partnership takes a lot of time. Communication and mutual understanding of what everyone does or how they work is the biggest challenge. Introducing people to parts of the community they might not explore on their own is a benefit, I'm guessing. We do have good partnerships, but struggle to make it equal and useful to both parties. Here's another challenge, finding ways to work together that mutually benefit. We have one person, but the position just started less than a year. The biggest challenge is not overextending and staying to our mission. So using partnerships to provide programming. So there's lots here.
Yes, yes. And so all of those are, yeah. And I think the one that really hits home for me is those municipal partnerships and them not understanding how valuable the library is within their location, and that it's an amenity. And we libraries don't make money, and so a lot of times they're seen as the first place that if something needs to happen, then especially if you're a part of the actually a department of the city, they will cut your funding so they can move it somewhere else. A lot of libraries obviously are lucky because they actually have their own mill levy rate, and so they have their own tax base that they go off of, and so that way it's not getting taken. But always making sure that that you're spending that money that you get, and all of it, so that they don't come back and say, hey, you obviously don't need this much. So there's always something to think about. And one thing that we did when I was at Goddard, which is actually a suburb of Wichita, so we had a lot of resources to pull from for partnerships, but our city did not think that the library was a benefit. And so working with them to get them to understand that, and we would do that we were a benefit, we would do surveys yearly, and I would always try to come up with a question that was geared toward making them see the value of the library. And so the last year I was there, the question was, do you come into Goddard specifically to go to the library? Because we had a lot of people who came to our programs, and from outside all of the areas around Wichita, even if they had their own library, they were coming. And so after we asked that question, we said, while you're here, what else do you do? And so usually they'd be going either to some of our local businesses and patronizing there, or they'd be going to Walmart or getting gas. So we were bringing in money. We were bringing in tax revenue to the city. And so we wanted to make sure the city understood that we actually were benefiting them, and we were actually bringing in some revenue for them. So I think you have to play the political game a little bit, and make sure that they understand those things, and be strategic about how you get them involved sometimes. We also made a bookmobile, and when we did the ribbon cutting, we made sure that we did it 30 minutes before the city council meeting, which the city hall was like diagonal from the library. And so and we personally invited all of the city council members. And so if they hadn't shown up, it would have looked a little bit like, why weren't they here? They have to be down here anyway. And so wound up getting them all there for that too. And so sometimes just thinking strategically like that can help you, at least reach them a little bit easier. One of the other things I love about libraries, all libraries, is that they're all about building those connections and relationships. And those connections and relationships you build will lead, naturally to partnerships. And good relationships within your communities do make your library successful. And you need to nurture those because, especially in small areas, you need to keep all of your interactions positive. People see you and they say, they see you, they see the library. And so even when you're not technically on the clock, you're on the clock, because if they see you at a sporting event or they see you out somewhere shopping, they're going to say, oh, can you renew that book for me? And that's just the nature of small towns. And then saying yes as often as possible. And I know you do have to make sure that you're not overextending yourself, because burnout is a real thing. And so sometimes having to be on all the time can be a little bit stressful, and it can wear you out. So, know your limits and know when you need to say no, and make sure that you're taking that time that you need for yourself so you can recharge that battery and be ready to go. And always say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And do it in multiple ways. Send follow-up emails, send a handwritten letter, do it in person. And sometimes with getting those partnerships rolling, sometimes you do have to make that effort to meet in person and to really have those face-to-face conversations and build those relationships that way. And so always keeping that in mind. And one of the things I like to do is city council meetings are a great way to build those connections within your community. City council, county commission meetings, things of that nature, so that you are making those connections that way. Okay. And like everybody said, and when I asked the question, you need to make sure you are building your partnerships around common visions. Common missions are great. If you can tie your mission into the city's mission and vision, that's a good way to get them on board as well. And you have to have the same goals. So really making sure, I know somebody said communication is an issue. That really can be an issue, but so sometimes that's when it's better to meet in person and actually kind of talk to those people in person and make sure that you're on the same page. We're working on renewing a lease in one of our towns right now. And instead of calling me, the city council members were out trolling our website and then assuming a lot of things that were not true. And so I told him, I said, please just call me if you have questions. I am more than happy to speak with you. And so, but that did take a face-to-face meeting with them to say, hey, we really want to make this a fair, the lease wasn't terribly fair to the city. And so we did want to improve that. And so really once they talked to us in person and saw that we aren't trying to get them to pay for everything, that we will pay what we need to be paying, they were a lot more open to that. So face-to-face is important. So partnerships really are all about, they contain all of this: outreach, marketing, community engagement, advocacy. It's all part of partnerships. And so, again, being out in your community. But so the definition here is cooperation between people or organizations in the public or private sector for mutual benefit. And I know somebody was talking about how do you make that equal? And sometimes that is very difficult. And so you really need to go into these partnerships with, how much time and effort am I going to have to expend? And is that going to be beneficial to the library? And is it going to be beneficial to that partner? And if you have to answer no to any of those, then it's probably not going to be worth your time to really pursue that. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but most of the time that's going to be how that happens. And so basically partnerships exist on a continuum. And on this next slide, we're going to talk about this continuum. So Noah Lenstra out of North Carolina has done some research, actually a lot of research, on health and partnerships. And so most of the research that's out there is more geared toward health and how building those partnerships help communities with health-related issues. And so the top part of this graphic is from Noah Lenstra and how perceptions can change. And so really what we're talking about when we're not feeling valued and when we're wanting to build partnerships, but people don't see us as partners, they don't see that there's any benefit of partnering with the library. This top part is what we're talking about. And so really when you start a partnership with somebody or go start talking to somebody about trying to build one, they're looking at you as a book repository. So you check out books. That's all you do. So how is that going to benefit us? And so along with that comes a little bit of education on your part, trying to explain, well, these are the things that we can help, how we can help you reach more people, how we can have, if we have enough space, a lot of places don't have, a lot of libraries don't have enough space, but if you actually have a space for programming, we are a space you could use if you had something going on. And so then looking at how the perceptions change into stage 2, and yes, so now they're looking at you because you're a trusted resource. They realize, oh, we're here. People turn to the library, and so we're stable. But trust is a big one. So really, when you talk to people about partnerships, really pushing that idea of trust. We're very trusted in the community. Everybody comes to us for this, and this is how we could benefit you. And then looking at stage 3, where after you've been partnering with somebody, they see and this is librarian. I consider it library, because if you're working for a library, it's just the library, because it may not be the director. It could be anybody on your staff, and most of you don't have staff, but if you're lucky enough to have staff, it could be somebody else. And so I just say the library is the partner, and really working with your partners. So here, librarians work with the partner to figure out what to do in our communities. So really looking at the gaps in services, what is an issue that the whole community is facing, that the library could partner with specific organizations to really help in that area. And so that's just how that can change. And so the next line, where we go, networking, coordinating, cooperating, and collaborating, that is the continuum for partnerships. That we start at networking, which can be obviously just meeting, doing newsletters together or sending newsletters out, really just networking and getting to know those people. And that begins the relationship. And then, sorry, I'm making a mess over here. But it provides a forum for the exchange of ideas and information for mutual benefit. And so, like I said, the newsletters, conferences, meetings, electronic information sharing, just really making those connections and building that relationship. Coordinating involves exchanging information and altering activities for a common purpose. Cooperating involves exchanging information, altering activities, and sharing resources. And so obviously these get a little bit more involved as you go along. The cooperating does require a significant amount of time and a high level of trust and sharing. And so then you get to collaborating, which is enhancing the capacity of the other partner for mutual benefit and a common purpose. And that's in addition to all the things before. And so really with rural libraries, when you're small and you're rural, you're going to spend most of your time in the coordinating and cooperating part of partnerships, because of the fact that you don't have the staff capacity to do a lot of other things, or the budgetary capacity to do that. And so true collaboration within that more in-depth type of partnership will be rare in small and rural libraries. But on the bottom line, the little flag, so is community engagement. And so as you get involved in your community more, that increases your impact, the trust of the community, and it helps with communication. The more that you're involved within the community doing things, that's going to help with the communication aspect of that. So how do we go about getting this to start happening? And really, it's about embedding your library in the community and changing those perceptions. And so the definition of embedding is to fix firmly in a surrounding mass. So how does the library do that? And you need to really look at the relationships that already exist, and think about, how does a library become indispensable to your community? Because that's really what we're looking at. That's what we're wanting to do, is be that indispensable place, to be the person who's asked to come to the table, that the library is involved in these changes or the issues that are concerning your community. And really, you need to be that indispensable piece that, if something's going on, they automatically come to you. So how do you make your library indispensable? You have to get involved. You have to get feedback. You have to market the library. You need to reinvest in the community, and obviously the common goal part is very, very important. Um, and so getting involved, um, you need to look at the organizations in your community or in the community next to you. If you're lucky enough to have several smaller communities, I know some of you said that you really work together with different libraries. And in other towns, and that's great if you can do that, if you're close enough that you can really do that and have joint programming. In Kansas, we did 14 counties, and several of our libraries in one county went ahead and did some combined programming, and where the patrons had to visit each library to get a stamp. It was kind of like a passport thing, but you could go, and they just did different. They did like a seed sharing, and they did spices, and they did all kinds of different things. They had a book club that they all read the same book and met. And so it was really a countywide program that they did together, which helped, and they got a grant to do it. And so they all benefited from that grant. But the lead librarian who did that, she was from the biggest library, and she had the most staff and the most time. So that helped those little ones that only had one staff member who didn't have the time to write that grant, really helped support those smaller ones, which is very important. But you have to be visible in your community. So you have to be out. And I know most people, most places, even if they're really small, have some kind of annual event that the library can be a part of. And so really making sure that you know when those events are. If you can be involved in the planning of those events, that makes it even better. But having your library there and having a presence is important. And I know some of you said you work with your school district as well, and so do many of our libraries here in Latah County, and it really does help us reach more children. We've partnered with the school this fall and wound up allowing all the students to go ahead and sign up for cards. We let them take home the packets, because the schools, we have a policy that you have to prove your residency. And so the school had already done that, so I wasn't worried about that. So we just sent them home with the kids, and we wound up signing up 50 children for library cards. So they'll be able to actually participate this summer when their parents may be too busy to actually take them to the library. If they're staying in town, they can just walk down to the library. And so doing things like that is very important. And really so, and sometimes working with the schools can be difficult. Sometimes the librarians aren't the correct contact for you to do that. Sometimes it's the administrator, sometimes it's the English teachers. That's where we had to get an in with when we started a teen advisory board in Goddard, is we had to really work with the English teachers, because they were the ones who were more excited about that. And so that they were the ones supporting the kids to get more involved in the library. Obviously get to know your local business owners, and like I said, attend city council meetings, host a coffee with the mayor at the library, get the mayor or the police chief or the fire captain to come and do story time. Bring the fire truck, which is always fun. The kids love that. They love to do all that stuff. So just really making sure that you're building those relationships and having that presence. The next part is feedback. So, and actually this could be on the getting the feedback's just as important as being involved, but so those could flip flop, but you have to know your community to be able to serve it. And sometimes, especially in small communities, we think we know our community and we have preconceived ideas about that. And so we have to be careful about those, because that's not always accurate. Obviously, perceptions toward the library aren't accurate. And so our perceptions toward the community could possibly not be accurate. You have to know your demographics. You have to know, who lives in your community. What's the median household income? What's the, how many children in the school qualify for free and reduced lunches, things of that manner. And so really looking, Census Bureau is a great place to get a lot of information. Any place that you can get the school district information. The National Center for Education Statistics has a lot of information on it. And then still state health and children's organizations are a great place to find statistics as well. And when you get this data, that you can create your community profile, which is the single most important document a library creates in order to serve its community better. And so it really just totally is a map of your community. You know, who's here, what do they need, you know, how can we help? And so it's basically, a summary of conditions and trends in a community as told through data sources. And it will help you identify potential programming, fundraising, sponsorship opportunities, and partners. So really making sure that you have that data is important. And it can help you. It's instrumental in, you know, preparing grant applications if you have time to do that, and in strategic planning, which I know in some really small locations you may not have a strategic plan, but you always at least have goals. And so, because if you don't have goals, then you're not moving forward, and you really need to make sure that you are moving forward. And then, like I said, using the surveys, and always bribe people to get them to take the surveys. So always have a prize basket and let people see it. So advertise that on social media and all that stuff. If you're out in the community at an event, then take it with you so everybody can see that, because that really does spur people to get involved and to take the surveys. And you can do SWOT and SOAR or SMART analyses. Those are all ones that you can do with your staff and your board, your friends groups, your foundation if you have one. But make sure that you remember that the community does include your staff, your board, your friends, and your foundation. So make sure you are getting input from them. So now we're at marketing the library. So basically, if you're out doing surveys, you're marketing the library. If you're out being involved in the community, you're marketing the library. And it is something that's constant. It's a 24/7 thing that has to happen in one form or another. And you need to make sure you're not just marketing your programs and services, but your collections as well. And one really good way to do that, obviously, is through social media and on your website, and just having your new items that come in and taking pictures and posting those up there. People like to see all of that when that comes in. And then obviously the things that get great engagement are pictures of events on social media. People love those, to see the community members actually involved in events and services at your library. But make sure you have releases for those. Or we actually have at Latah County, all of our libraries have a statement posted at the door that says that, you know, during programs or services, we may have pictures can be taken, videos can be taken that we will use on social media and to market the library. And so if you have an issue with that, if you don't want your image shared, please let the staff know that before the program starts. And so, and everybody's supposed to, before a program starts, remind people of that so that they have that option to opt out. Because we don't want to make it hard for somebody that shouldn't have their image posted out there, having it out there. But when you build up your marketing, that does attract partners. It's really all of the, if they're hearing great things about the library around town, they're going to be going, maybe we should talk to the library. And you help them reach a larger audience. Partnerships should help you reach a larger audience or a different audience, and should help the partner do that as well. And obviously building relationships is part of that marketing process as well. Okay, so reinvesting in your community. So don't just join the chamber or join a site council. You don't just join the chamber, get involved in the chamber, be on the board, or join site councils at the schools, or just make people understand you want to be invited to the table. Sometimes that can take a while. In Goddard, I was there 4 years, and we were actually providing preschool story times monthly to the preschoolers because they had taken library time away from them. And so we were doing story times and letting them check out books monthly. And so they had that access in a small way. And we had been doing that for 2 years before they actually started inviting me to come to the early childhood site council. And so sometimes it can take a while. That was 4 years. That was a long time. And to already have been doing so much with them anyway, and that still took that long. So sometimes it's just persistence. You have to continue to really explain or let them know that you're available and you want to be there. You want to have that seat at the table so that you are helping with the community and helping to grow that or fill some gap or something like that. And obviously that's supporting your schools that way too. Support your businesses, shop local all as much as you can. A lot of, if you're large enough to have a chamber, a lot of times they have chamber bucks or chamber gift cards. And so if even, excuse my dogs, I was afraid they'd start barking. Even if you're not going to take a lot of that money, those gift cards won't be used a lot. It would only be used if somebody lost material or damaged material. So you probably aren't going to be using them that much. Having that opportunity, I think, is important for the community members, and showing your support to the local business community by being a part of that, I think is worth doing it, whether you use it a lot or not. So community engagement equals opportunities, obviously. And one of the things is, if you don't ask, you're not going to know. And you should never assume. So you really need to ask. And so looking at the city government, making those connections. Parks and Rec is a great one to partner with if you can. State Extension, I know somebody mentioned that they really partner with their state extension. That's an awesome place to partner. School districts, any of community action groups, local civic organizations, churches, businesses, anything you can think of. And like I said, if you have a town close to you, also those as well. And if you're going to do that and they have a library, really reaching out to that other library and talking to them first and saying, hey, we want to do this and we'd love to include you in it. So you're not poaching on their territory, making sure that you're having those conversations with them as well. And one thing that you can do as well is actually coming up with sponsorship levels and sending out letters. We usually send them out in January. In Goddard, we did this, and then we are doing it here too in Latah County for summer reading mostly, but we send them out in January. And so that gives them time to think about the fact that, oh, this is coming up and we can be involved in summer reading, or we can be involved in some other special events that are going on at the library. And you list those out, and then within those levels, you have what they get out of that for spending that money for supporting that program. And that's kind of based off of how chambers do their sponsorship levels. And so, but it really just gives you another way to reach out to your community and try to find out what ways that people are willing to support you in that. And it can also be within that letter, you can have volunteer opportunities if you have something that you want to put on, if you have programming and you have a special program coming up and you need volunteers for that and things of that nature. But really putting within those sponsorship levels, what that partner is going to get out of spending that money is the important part. And so in Goddard, we also put together early literacy multisensory kits. And so basically it was story time in a bag. But each of the bags that we put together were sponsored by a local business. And so in the front of each bag, we put them in clear backpacks. And in the front of each of those, we put who sponsored that. And so the kids are carrying these around town with these big things, big, basically little plastic signs that are promoting that business. And so we got 30 of those really quickly. Within a year and a half, we had 30 of those sponsored. And so really just thinking outside the box a little bit and thinking of things you're wanting to do and ways you're wanting to help the community and moving forward with that. And like I said, if you don't ask, you don't know. I also say, if you don't ask, you get 100% of nothing. And so, and I know sometimes it's uncomfortable to ask, but you're asking for the community as a library. And so I don't feel like I don't have as hard a time justifying asking because of that, because I'm really just doing it to help the community out. And also make sure, build your relationships now. So especially with all the book banning going on, we need to make sure that we are building those relationships with local, state, and national elected officials, because when we need them, we want them to already have that understanding of what we do and how valuable we are to our communities. And so building those relationships before you need them is very important. So basically be careful when you're building partnerships. Make sure you do what you say you're going to do. And so basically what we know about partnerships right now is that they help libraries with funding and with reach, with usable space, especially if you don't have a big space. Partnering with local groups that have more space is always important. And they help with advocacy. And like somebody else said, only partner if it's beneficial. Yes, you both need to benefit and try to make those partnerships equal. And prospective partners don't view libraries as partners. That's what's been discovered, is that unless an organization is already partnering with a library, they don't see them as a partner. And so really you have to make sure that you are promoting that, and that you're educating along with that. So partnerships help partners, they help them with reach. And what we're learning is that partnerships can change the perspectives of those partners and their perceptions of the library. And so, like I said, being careful to make those very positive relationships. Do what you say you're going to do. Make sure that you follow through. Have those talks in person if you need to. And so what else are we learning? How do true rural library partnerships look? And part of the problem with that is the agreement on what is rural. There is huge differences in what different organizations say are rural. For instance, IMLS says that rural is anything under 25,000. But that's a huge difference from a library that has 198 people that it serves to 25,000 people. That is a huge difference in library size and in capacity, staff capacity, budgetary capacity. And so within my research, I tried to narrow that down more, and really looking at the different, what metropolitan and micropolitan communities are, and what the criteria was going to be for what I'm going to look at as rural. And basically metropolitan areas are 50,000 or more, usually 100,000 within the surrounding area. Micropolitans are anything from 10 to 25,000 or 10 to 50,000. And so really looking at cutting those out and not using those areas, and really keeping it focused on libraries that are in communities that are have individuals of 10,000 or less that they're serving. And because I feel like that will give better data, because they'll be more similar than the huge gap space between very small 100 people to 25,000. And so I think that's one of the issues that some of this research needs to look at, is figuring out and agreeing on what really is rural. Most of the health things, the research that's come out was basically all around health, but it was all within micro and metropolitan areas. Even though they said they were rural areas, they were still pretty big populations. And so I think that is something that needs to be distinguished as well. So during this talk, has your idea of partnerships changed? And what questions do you have? So you guys can start typing away in the chat again if you would like to do that. And I will look at it because I haven't been.
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was just looking at our entire library system would be considered rural under that research criteria. And I think you really need to not have that be such a broad definition with so much population, because like I said, libraries are very different. I mean, we in Moscow have 25,000 or 26,000. And so it's a very different setup. We have a lot more staff. And so we are able to do a lot more because we have a lot more people that we're serving in a much smaller area. And so really making sure that we are very different from our small, teeny tiny libraries. And so, yeah, it's really just looking at those differences and really looking at, because one of the things is if you don't have a lot of population, you don't have a lot of people to partner with. Our rural library is basically partnering with state agencies. Are they partnering with extension offices? Is that mainly where they're partnering? So probably, yeah, I saw the first step on the 1300. One thing that Medicine Lodge was the first place that I was, and they had a population of about 1900. And one of the ways, their chamber wasn't terribly active, though they did do a few things, so we would get involved. One thing that we did was we started doing scavenger hunts around town, getting businesses involved in the scavenger hunts. And we would have clues at the library. I also did a weekly column in the newspaper, so we'd put the clues in there as well. And so really looking at just easy ways to get people involved. If somebody supports you during summer reading, give them a little certificate that said, I supported the public library for summer reading, whatever the graphics are that year. And that just makes them feel appreciated, and they can post it up if they want to say, hey, I'm supporting the library, and that markets the library if they do put it up. And it makes them feel like they're doing something. But really just finding easy ways. The post office loved that we did the scavenger hunt, and they wanted to be involved every year. They thought it was great. And so just really looking at those little things that you can do. And we would also do the scavenger hunt within the library too. So we'd have a clue for something that was hiding in the library as well. And we would make that relevant with the graphics of what was going on. So around town, when it was Build a Better World, we had the little builder guy, and we would hide him around town, but we would hide his tools in the library. And so really looking at that and just little things to do, but making sure. The other thing that we were very involved in was the Halloween parade. And everybody would meet at the library before the Halloween parade started. And so we were kind of the ones that would help put that on and make sure that all the candy was getting donated by all the businesses. And so just simple things like that. But we had a local business, local special needs business that would actually have their individuals would put all of the bags of candy together. So anyway, okay. I'm going to let you read me off some, Leah, because I've
sounds good. That sounds great. Okay, so how do you handle? I guess here's a good handling question. I'm sorry. How do you handle partnerships with for-profit organizations? Any advice on making clear boundaries about what
and that's kind of where we had those sponsorship levels. And so if you have sponsorship levels when you're working with a for-profit business, there are very clear guidelines in this. This is what you're going to get out of, if you give us this much money, this is exactly what you're going to get. And making sure that it's not something, you don't want them advertising, you don't want them, it's a very, very fine line. You want to be able to get their information out, but you don't want it to really, people feel like they have to patronize that place. And so a lot of times it's basically the smallest level would be they'd get a blurb on social media. If you have signage in the library, the next level could be social media and stuff in the library or on your website. Just really simple things. Because most of what partners are going to get out of supporting the library is that visual that hey, these people partner with the library, we trust the library, so that trust is going to get moved over to that business because that business is caring enough to really support the library. And so looking at it like that, but having that clear designation of like, if you do this, you're going to get this, is important.
Thank you. How about, do you think it's better to create deep relationships with one or two groups, or to have more shallow relationships with many groups?
I think you need to have both. So I think you need to really look at, maybe you just have one that you have a really, really deep relationship with, and the rest of them. And I don't, because I think you have to know the organizations that you're going to partner with. So to me, knowing them means it's deeper, but maybe you're not getting as much support from them, and they're not expecting as much from you. So that makes it not as deep. Um, and so really looking at, you have one or two that you're like, wholeheartedly, we're in on this, we're doing these things all the time with these people, but having a few others that are like, okay, we would like you to help us out, we would like to help you out, and what can we do on the periphery of that to really make that happen, and not make it time intensive, as time intensive as it could be with those deeper partnerships.
Okay. We had one comment earlier, and I'd be interested in what you have to say about that, about a library in a county that has 11 libraries in it, or 10 libraries in it. And there's county agencies who have a certain amount of capacity. Do you have any
Right.
thoughts about how to cooperate and share that capacity?
Right. And that's one of those things, because we're lucky because we are a county-wide, but we're a district. So all of our libraries, obviously we have 7 in our district. And so it's good in a way because we can build relationships with county agencies, but also within each community with those specialized groups. Most of them have Lions groups in them, or some other organization that we can partner with. And so I think when you have that many libraries, if you're not a district and you're not all working together, you need to make that happen. You need to work together and say, okay, this is a way that we can help each other out, and we can maybe not put too much pressure on those local agencies, or those countywide agencies, because they only have so much capacity. So how can all of the libraries work together to make that easier for that other partner? Because I think it's really important. I know sometimes libraries feel territorial, and librarians feel territorial, and so getting those people to come to the table sometimes is really challenging. But I think if you can say, hey, this is what we're thinking, and this is what we would like to do, and this is the possible impact of that if we do it together, as opposed to each doing it separately. I think, again, it's an education piece. Some people don't think that way, and so really bringing that to the table and trying to get them to change that thought process.
Thank you. It's good. That's great advice. Do you have any recommendations for how to revive a partnership, especially ones that may have dissolved during COVID times? Yeah.
And I think really just reaching out to them and saying, hey, we used to do these great things together. We would love to sit down and talk about this and see if there's any way that we can, again, come to the table and do some really great things together. Because we really miss this partnership, but just really making that partner feel like it was a valued partnership. I mean, even just reaching out to them, they're probably going to think, oh, well, that's great, they're thinking about us. But really just sitting down and having that one-on-one, I think, is important when you've had something dissolve, to try to really mitigate that. And sometimes there's hard feelings within that, and so that's why it's better to do that face-to-face. I know coming into this position, my foundation didn't have a great relationship with the former director. And so really sitting down with them and talking about the things that I felt like, these are the things I would like to do, and I would love your support in this. And really working on building that relationship back up has been important. And so, yeah, the face-to-face is how I would go with that.
Thank you. We had a request, if you could share any other examples of successful partnerships that you have that you've had.
That I've had. Like I said, we did a lot of things, and really our letter writing, sending out those letters in January and saying, okay, these are the programs we have coming up, and these are the sponsorship activities that you could do, and how much you could spend and what you'd get for it. I think that's really impactful, and send it to everybody. Like I said, sometimes that needs to be an email, because mailing things out can get really expensive these days. So if you have email contacts, email them that letter. But make sure it's personalized to them when you do it. And so making things very personal, I think, helps. And that's why the handwritten thank yous are so important, really making that personal touch. Even though my handwriting is terrible and people probably can't read it, they know I took the time to actually sit down and write that out. And that doesn't happen a lot these days. So just little things like that are important. And any little thing, I mean, if you know there's a business in town that's struggling and you're like, okay, what can we do to help? If you know there's a gap in services that really needs to happen, that as well. And so I am going to share before we go, hold on, before everybody leaves, maybe I am. I put that this is an AI generated image that I put together to kind of motivate me with my dissertation stuff. And it says, libraries aren't just buildings, they're community connectors. By actively engaging with local residents, partnering with schools and organizations, and hosting events and programs, libraries extend their reach beyond their physical walls to become integral parts of the communities they serve. And I think that's what libraries are here for. We're here to build those connections, not just for us, but for our patrons as well. And so here is my contact info too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of ideas and inspiration here. We still have a couple minutes, and I do have another couple questions if you're okay with that.
I'm good with it.
All right. So I'm just going to see here. Just making sure I'm not missing something. There we go.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Good idea. There, now we can see your whole face.
Oh, my whole face, yeah.
Or not, well, whatever.
Yeah, I know.
How do you have any advice about if there's a partnership that is maybe either that you've been trying and trying and trying, like you said, persistence pays off. Do you have any tips for how to recognize when it's time to stop trying or when it's time to maybe end a partnership that isn't mutually beneficial?
Right. And I think most of the time partners are going to understand that. So, and I think you can try and try and try. And I mean, don't put a ton of effort into that. Like with the school district, we weren't like, we were doing what we were doing for them, and we kept doing that. And we would reach out occasionally for other things. And one really great thing to do is go out to the schools before the end of school and do summer reading promotions. And so take a PowerPoint and say, these are the things we've got going on, and these are the prizes we're going to have, to get the kids excited about that. And so those, I've never had problems with getting into the school that way. It was really just getting them to say, hey, please come, let us come to the table and share our ideas with you too when you're doing these things. And so that was what was hard. And I think just continuing to be available and continuing to let them hear your voice, even when you feel like they're not listening, is really important. But there comes a time when it's like, I don't have time to do this, and I've got other things, I've got other priorities. And when you get to that point, you're there, you're still doing something, but hopefully eventually they will come to you and say, hey, we would like you to be involved in this. But sometimes that's never going to happen, and you have to let that go, and just do what you can and move on and find other ways to spend your energy. So
excellent. Thank you so much. And it's looking good. I want to reiterate, we had a request to share that last slide, and that Carla's slides,
yes.
April slides are going to be available on the Wild Wisconsin website, so you can find that slide again, and all the other ones too, yes, as well as a recording. And so all of that will be available. Jean just put the link in the chat, and you'll get that with a follow-up email as well. And I want to also remind you that we will be doing a survey after this session. So please take time to fill out that survey. It will help. It really does help us. We pay attention to that feedback. So thank you very much. And I'm just looking to see. Okay, mostly we're just hearing thank yous. So I appreciate
thank you
it,
all
everyone
for coming. Yeah, everybody coming today and listening.
Thank you, April, and thank you everyone for being here. Thanks, Jean, for your help behind the scenes. And We'll hopefully see you at one of the next 2 sessions. Take care, everyone.